Well, Brad Wilcox goes on the Renn show and he says, and he wrote a book that says men need to get married. Just get married, man up and do it. Get married. Now, he's got a few reasons why, and I'm going to highlight a couple of them here and say, boy, I don't know in 2024 if this is really going to encourage the young men to get married. Now, the statistics say that men and women age 18 to 34, over half are not married, they're not engaged, they're not even in a relationship at all. Over half, 18 to 34. That statistic is crazy. That's crazy. And Brad's telling the men, get married, man up and do it. Now, he's going to start off with the red pill and how the red pill is to blame for some of this nonsense of how men just don't want to get married. It's the red pill's fault. Maybe it is. I don't know. Let's have a listen. What's he got to say here?
There are plenty of people on the predominantly online right who really argue against marriage. They're as explicitly militantly anti-marriage as any other group. But maybe they're disproportionate in their online presence relative to the world at large. Where I think the average Republican kind of conservative person still wants to get married.
So what's I think complicated here, right, is that there are a decent minority of men, right, who've been divorced unwillingly, and we'll get to this in a second, and also young men too are having difficulty finding someone to date and marry, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I think we're sort of beginning to see a kind of modified South Korea scenario play out here, right? South Korea is known recently for having a lot of younger women in their 20s move to the left, and then a lot of younger men move to the right in a context where there is relatively little dating, relatively little marriage, relatively little childbearing in South Korea. There's a kind of poisonous wall that's kind of emerged, dividing the sexes in South Korea. And on the left side of this wall are a lot of women, and on the right side of this wall are a lot of men. Of course, there are plenty of South Koreans and also Americans who are in the middle. But I just think the dynamic here is that there are young men and middle-aged men who have had, either bad experiences with women or no experience with women, and they are susceptible to the kind of red pill, view that's articulated by people like Pearl Davis and Andrew Tate.
Oh man, well, these poor ostracized young men. They are susceptible to the views of Pearl Davis and Andrew Tate. Now, Andrew Tate is an entertainer. I know he is a 5-time kickboxing world champion, whatever, but the guy, he's an entertainer. That's all he is. Like, it's a lot of nonsense with Andrew Tate. Pearl Davis is also an entertainer. And to say that Pearl Davis has that much power over young men, I just find that very interesting. Pearl Davis, really. You listen to Pearl, and I like Pearl. I think she makes some very valid points in the things that she says. I've done a couple videos on some of the things that Pearl has said. But to say that she is somehow shifting the entire American culture for not wanting to get married, I think that's giving Pearl a lot of credit. I'm pretty sure Pearl would not take the credit for that. Pearl just sees what's going on around her and sees how bad of a deal that marriage can be for the average man. She sees how the average woman doesn't seem to want the average man. Brad, he recognizes here, a lot of men don't have much luck with the women. Well, why is that? Why isn't the average man having very much luck with the woman? I mean, is it because we've set up our entire society to basically advantage women and disadvantage men? Like, could that be a clue into why, from the court systems to the colleges to the whatever else, like, could that be a clue here of why the men don't seem to have much luck with women? I don't know. Hey, give me a comment, like, subscribe, give me a comment. Let me know like what you think about what's going on here. And the thing that's happening is South Korea is just the tip of the iceberg for what's going to happen, I think, in modern countries. Now, they're not a Western country, but they behave kind of Western-like. I think they are going to lead the charge in what's going to happen with their young men are going more to the right. Their young women are going more to the left, and nobody's getting married. No one is having kids there. I mean, their birth rate is through the floor, which is sad because I lived in Korea for a year. I taught English there. The Korean people they're very good people. And just to see their birth rate just go through the floor is really, really sad. And I don't know. We'll listen a little more, but I don't think blaming someone like Pearl Davis for men not being interested in marriage. Like, I think he missed the boat on that one here. Let's go on. He's going to talk about how you can stay married then. Like, if you do get married, how you can stay married. And I thought this was really interesting. This is a good point. Let me go to it.
Guys and women that I know, good people, good spouses, good parents, and they were just kind of left high and dry. So that happens. I acknowledge that. And Pearl Davis makes some good points in that kind of arena. But the point is that there are ways to reduce your risk of divorce dramatically, right? And so I talk about.
All right, so we're going to reduce the risk. Here we go. Reduce the risk for divorce. If you guys are taking notes.
5 C's to a strong marriage. The first C is communion. Second C is children. The third C is commitment. The fourth C is cash. The C is community. And I'll just touch on the middle group of those.
Commitment. Isn't that what you do when you get married? Aren't you committing? Like, I'll have to read the book. I haven't read the book. But when you said commitment, I was like, what? I mean, getting married, that's about the biggest commitment you could ever make to a single person. They're like, what? Anyway, all right, let's move on.
So when it comes to communion, I think one mistake a lot of us men make, and certainly I've been guilty of this at times, right, is that we, in a sense, leave the romance for before the wedding day and don't keep it up after the wedding day. And so we have to work, I think, especially as men, to be emotionally attentive and engaged, affectionate, empathetic, doing all that emotion work that many of us men, find to be less natural to some extent.
Okay, so this is a good point. He's saying if you want to stay happily married, you have to keep up the romance. Now, I need a comment below. Somebody, if anybody's listening to this, please comment below on this. A married man who's been married more than a decade, trying to keep up the romance, is that really going to keep a marriage together with a wife that's not attracted to her husband anymore? Is that really going to do it? Now, he's talking about the red pill people, Tate, Pearl, those. You could say the blue pill thinking is, well, I as a man must keep up the romance somehow. I must be planning dates for my wife. I must be doing XYZ, doing chore play, doing the dishes, blah, 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 in hopes that I can keep the romance alive and then she'll stay married to me. Marriage is not about romance. Marriage is not, that's not romance. Christian marriage certainly is not about romance. I don't know. I just want give me some comments here. I just thought that was it. Like, to stay married, you got to keep the romance alive. Boy, that is hard to do. That is really hard to do. If that's one of the keys, I think we're all in trouble. I mean, Tom Brady couldn't even keep it together with Giselle. This is Tom Brady. Like, what? All right. Now, he does point to men in the military, and he'll talk about how men in the military have a higher success rate in getting married. I don't think they have a higher success rate in staying married, but they have a higher success rate in actually getting married. So we can learn some things from that. Let's go to that.
The second thing that I would say is that a lot of progressives, and even some conservatives, say there's nothing, Aaron, that can be done to policy-wise strengthen marriage. It's a fool's errand.
Okay, so what policies can the government put in place? Here's what he's going to talk about. What policies can be put in place that the government can do to encourage marriage? Okay, here we go. Here we're going to talk about that.
That our nation's biggest federal agency is extremely successful in promoting marriage. What am I talking about, Aaron, do you think?
Which one is it? I know the answer, but I'll let you.
Okay, so you've heard this before.
Yeah, I've read the book. I actually read the book.
The biggest agency in America is the Department of Defense, right? And so we know, and I'm not saying that, military has its problems, a lot of stress, combat-related deployments, moving. These are not good for marriage. Happy to acknowledge that. But I'm just saying the idea that marriage cannot promote marriage successfully is completely untrue. And we know because men who are currently serving in the U.S. military or have served in the U.S. military are way more likely to have gotten married compared to their roughly equivalent peers, and this is what's striking about this too, who haven't served in the military. What's striking is that the racial gap between whites and blacks is a lot lower in the military when it comes to who's getting married, and the gap between the college educated and less educated also looks to be smaller too. So point is that if you're cohabiting in the military, your cohabiting partner is not going to get access to healthcare, is not going to get, access to a nicer house, housing option for military, and I think some other benefits as well. So these clear benefits incent marriage and military. And so I think given that reality, we should be thinking about policies that more explicitly incentivize marriage.
So if you're in the military, because I have friends that are, active military, and I've actually had friends talk about this, how this is actually really bad for marriage long term, because the military encourages you to get married because then you get paid more. Like if you are active duty and you're married, your salary goes up quite a bit just for being married. And then of course you can bring on this spouse with your health benefits and whatnot. Now, if you're in the private sector, you obviously don't get a pay bump if you're married. Your employer doesn't care. But we have the same thing in the private sector. If you get married, then your spouse can be on your insurance when you get married. That is an incentive. I actually know people in the private sector that have gotten married just so that their girlfriend could get health benefits. I actually know a guy that he got married to a woman who was just his friend, but she had a private business and she wanted health insurance. And he said, well, I'll help you out. Why don't you we can get married and then you can be on my health insurance. And she said, okay. Now, was that guy a dummy? Yeah, he probably yeah, he was. But you could do that, right? You could do that. And so he's saying, hey, a way for us to encourage people to get married is to do, or a way for the government to encourage people to get married is just to incentivize by paying them to get married like the military does. So here's the solution.
To give a 20% bonus when it comes to the child tax credit for married parents as a way of kind of signaling symbolically that marriage matters and giving people, financial incentive as well.
Okay, so giving a 20% child tax credit to the married couple, blah, blah, that would encourage people to get married, yada, yada, yada. I've got 5 kids. My child tax credits are awesome. And like, I don't know if that would still encourage, like the child tax credit right now is really good. It's really good. I don't think that's going to do anything to encourage people to get married. Now, he brought up South Korea, which is a good point. He brought up South Korea. South Korea currently will pay women to have kids. Like the last number I saw was like the equivalent of like $70,000 or something just to have a kid. So not only will you get a tax break, they will pay you to have a kid, and they still can't get anybody to get married, and let alone get married and have kids, right? They still can't get them to do that there in South Korea. So he's bringing up South Korea. It's like, boy, you need to pay attention to what's going on in South Korea to know that just giving people a tax credit is not going to fix this marriage problem at all. It's not going to do it. He's going to get at the crux of the issue, though. I don't even know if he realizes that he got at the crux of the issue, but he's going to get at the crux of the issue. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the video. And this is a real sweetheart that he talks about here. Let's go to the beginning here.
The thing that I've noticed in the last couple of years is that the new thing that the media has been promoting is this idea that women should divorce husbands who are, by their own admission, great husbands and fathers. There was a big thing about Adele in Vogue that was like that, basically, how she had to go find herself or something like that. Laura Bazelon wrote one in the Times. I'm like, this is crazy. You guys all say, yeah, my husband's awesome guy, great dad, and I'm divorcing him anyway. It's like really a weird kind of message to be sending out to people.
Yeah, no, it is quite bizarre that there are all these pieces, that you touch on. There's another piece in the Atlantic on this too, that just are basically women saying that, yeah, their husbands are good guys. Yeah, they may even still love them in some kind of way, but they just need to divorce them to be free, to kind of do the next thing. The Atlantic famously talked about trying shrooms and multiple partners, and I think having more time to write. So that's why she divorced her husband and the father of her 3 children. It's just like, what? Can you say that? And of course, the irony here, right, Aaron, is that we would never get a crop of articles that would be taking this line from the husband's perspective. So You've seen so many articles where wives are basically saying, yes, I got divorced, it's a good thing. And yes, my husband's a pretty good guy, or I still loved him, but I just needed to do it to be free, basically.
Yeah.
But I've never read one of those pieces published in a mainstream outlet from a guy kind of making the same argument about the value of divorcing his wife for really no good reason.
Yeah, true. And you're never going, in our culture, you're never going to see articles about how men say, yeah, I had to divorce that woman just to find myself and be rid of the old ball and chain and everybody clapping. Now, why is that though? This is like, we got to ask the question, why? Why is that, Brad? Why? And could that be related to why young men don't want to get married to these women out here, like the average woman? What? Why is that in a culture we celebrate women finding themselves and nobody even criticizes it? Why would that be? It's because we worship women in our culture. They are the sacred cows of our culture. They can't do any wrong. Hey, divorce your husband, you got 3 kids and you want to do shrooms and write books. Well, I mean, you got to do what's good for you, baby. Shouldn't somebody ask why? Like, what is going on in this culture? Could that be an indication of why people aren't getting married? Like, the young men see this and they listen to some red pill stuff and they go, man, maybe these red pill guys, they're right. I don't know. Give me a comment, like, subscribe to my channel. We got to get this fixed. I don't think Brad has the answers, though. I've listened to him in a couple different interviews. He's a PhD, blah, blah, writes books. His answers, I don't think, if his main thing is we got to give people a 20% tax incentive to have kids, that's not going to work. We've got not just South Korea. There's multiple countries that are paying a lot of money for people to have kids, and they're not doing it. They're not getting together, they're not getting married, and they're not having families. What is the answer? What is the answer? Well, the post-millennial man believes that the answer is Christ. It's found in Christ because Christ is winning. He is building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the post-millennial man.